Welcome back. Today we will be discussing a new lesson, that is chapter number 5, the fundamental unit of life. What are living organisms made up of? In chemistry, we know that everything around us is matter, and matter is made up of particles. So we are talking about mostly the non-living things. What about the living things? Of course, living things are also made up of matter. Fundamental unit of life is nothing but cell, about which you have already studied briefly in class 8. We will be talking a little more in detail. Now, the discovery of cell was done by Robert Hooke in the year 1665. Now, during Robert Hooke's time, like we have now, there were no electron microscopes or advanced microscopes. In fact, Robert Hooke made his own compound microscope. He observed a thin slice of cork under the microscope that he had prepared. It basically contains dead tissues. It is not alive. When Robert Hooke observed the piece of cork under the microscope, he saw that there were honeycomb like structures present. Robert Hooke named them as cella. In Latin, cella means small rooms or compartments. This is what is called as cell in English, and mostly these structures were uniform, of the same shape and size. He decided to call them as cells. Cells means small rooms. Later, Anton von Leeuwenhoek, he observed live cell for the first time. Robert Hooke was the first to observe a cell. It was a dead cell. Live cell was observed by Leeuwenhoek. Leeuwenhoek was not a scientist or an educationist. He was a simple worker, and he took interest in making lenses. So he had some idea of grinding glass and making lens out of it. So he made his own microscope once again. This was slightly different from Robert Hooke's microscope. It was a simple microscope. It had only one lens, and it had a magnification around 250 times more than Robert Hooke's microscope. Therefore, with that amount of magnification, he could see the internal structures also. He took a drop of water, pond water, under the microscope and observed it. He could see that there were certain things that were moving in the drop of water. On close observation, he found that this movement is because of the cells that Robert Hooke had discovered. This drop of water basically contained some bacteria and protozoa, which we know are living organisms. As years passed, with the development of more and more advanced microscopes, the magnification increased, and now we have electron microscopes wherein we can see each and every detail of the cell. What is the cell made up of, what is present inside the cell, and what are these components made up of, using advanced microscopes. So previously, scientists believed that life came spontaneously. This is what is called as the theory of spontaneous generation. But once the cells were discovered, they disproved this, and that is what is part of the cell theory. So, two scientists named Schleiden and Schwann, according to Schleiden and Schwann, every organism is made up of one or more cells. So all organisms are made up of cells. It could be one cell or it could be more than one cell. As you know, organisms having only one cell are called as unicellular organism. Uni means one. Organism, they have only one cell. If organisms have more than one cell, these are called as multicellular organisms. Bacteria, protozoa, amoeba, these are all examples for unicellular organisms. Fungus, plants, animals are examples for multicellular organisms. And the second point in the cell theory is that cell is the basic unit of life. Let us understand this statement in detail. Life means it is pertaining to living organisms. We know that in order to live, organisms have to do a lot of activities. They have to consume food, then they have to break this food to produce energy. They also have to throw the waste material out. They have to grow. They also have to reproduce. These are all properties of a living being. Now, all these activities in a living being, this is done by the cell. So, for example, human beings, if you take, we are made up of a trillion cells, and each cell performs its own function. And because cells are performing the functions, the organism is alive. Therefore, cell is called as the basic unit of life. All the processes and activities required for a living organism is carried out by cell. Not only that, the cells are also responsible for the structure of the living organism. For instance, we have our hand. The hand looks like this because of the cells. There are literally millions of cells that are present here, which when they are arranged in a proper manner, they provide the shape and structure, and they are also responsible for the function. Now, inside the cell, there are what are called as organelles. With the help of an advanced microscope, when you see a cell, you will see that there are small structures present inside the cell. These structures are living and they are what are called as organelles. For example, in the human body, we have different organs, eye, kidney, heart, liver, lungs, etc. If you consider the human body as one single cell and the organs inside the human body, similar organs are present inside the cell also. They are called as organelles because their size is very small. They cannot be called organs, they are known as organelles. There are two types of cells. The two types of cells are prokaryotes and eukaryote. This differentiation is done based on the presence or absence of nucleus. Prokaryotes or prokaryotic cells, these cells, they lack a nucleus. They do not have a proper well-defined nucleus. U means true. These have a true well-defined nucleus. Let us understand a few more differences between a prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. Before that, we'll come back to the cell theory. I was telling you about how scientists believed that life arises spontaneously. This theory was disproved by a scientist called as Virchow. He was the one who said that a new life is created by a pre-existing cell, and that is included as the third point in the cell theory. Cells arise from pre-existing cells. What does it mean? One cell will give rise to another cell. It also tells you a very important property of cells, that is their ability to divide. Only when a cell can divide, it can produce a new cell. Every day we lose hundreds of thousands of cells, and in their place new cells are created. That is because cells can divide and give rise to new cells. So together this is the cell theory. All organisms are made up of one or more cells. Cell is the basic unit of life, and cells arise from pre-existing cells, given by Schleiden and Schwann and Virchow. Karyon means nucleus. So the word karyote comes from the word karyon. Organisms that don't have a nucleus, organisms that have a nucleus. In general, the prokaryotic cells are small in size, less than 1 micrometer, whereas these are comparatively larger in size. So they will be greater than 1 micrometer. For example, bacteria. Bacteria is an example for prokaryotes. In fact, bacteria is the only example for prokaryotes, the bacterial family as such, which includes the cyanobacteria also. Rest, all the other organisms, living beings, they are eukaryotes. They have true nucleus. So all the other organisms, amoeba is a eukaryotic organism, and human beings, plants, fungus, animals, all will come under eukaryotes. The third important difference between a prokaryote and a eukaryote, organelles are absent. In the case of prokaryote, it's a bacteria, that is they have only ribosomes. They have only ribosomes. They don't have anything else. Whereas organelles are present. If you look at all the living beings that are known to us, we can classify them either into prokaryotes or into eukaryotes. Let us talk a little more about the shape and size of the cells. The cells are not visible to the naked eye. That means they are very, very small. If you have to observe a cell, you need what is called as a microscope. That means we use the microscope only to observe those things whose size is in the range of micrometer. That means cells, their size is in the micrometer range. 1 micrometer is equal to 10 to the power minus 6 meter. They are that small. Shape of cells. In an organism, in a single organism itself, there are different types and shapes of cell. Now, this depends on the function of the cell, meaning the function of the cell is dependent on the structure, that is the shape of the cell. Structure and function both are interrelated, both are connected. Let me explain. Take for instance the shape of the human nerve cell or neuron. The human nerve cell is very long. It is the longest cell in the human body, and mostly it is branched, long and branched. That is the shape of the neuron, as you can see in the diagram. Now, what has this shape got to do with the function? The function of the neuron is to transmit information from one part of the body to another part of the body. For example, I am able to see you. This is because there are neurons present in the eyes which are connected to the brain. So information is perceived in the form of light. When light hits this neuron, the neuron will receive this information, take this information to the brain and produces the image. So the main function of the neuron is to transport the information, pass the information. Therefore, they need to be long and branched in order for them to gather information fast and transmit it very fast. Take another cell, muscle cell in the human body. Muscle cells are like a rubber band. They are almost bulged in the center, but when they come to the edges, they become narrow. So we call it as a spindle shaped cell. So like this. Now this is because the main function of muscles is to contract and relax. Contract and relax. Because of this contraction and relaxation, I am able to speak, I am able to move my hand, move my eyes, etc. So that is the function of the muscles. So this spindle shape of the cell will help in contracting and relaxing, and it also gives the property of elasticity like a rubber band. Therefore, you can see the shape of the cell, the structure of the cell is responsible for the function of the cell. We call cell as the basic structural and functional unit of life. All the activities are because of the cell and its organelles. What would happen if the shape of the cell is destroyed? Take for example, you are ironing your cloth. By chance, the hot iron box touches your skin, and if you observe, that particular region will become red. After some time, it will become swollen. Some liquid will be present inside that, right? And if you touch that, you will feel pain because those cells are damaged or they are dead. So once the structure is lost, function will also be lost. So structure is absolutely required for function. You take a eukaryotic cell or a prokaryotic cell, both have three things in common, and these three things are present in each and every living cell. I am stressing on the word living because virus is not considered as a living being because it does not possess one of the three properties that I am going to tell you now. Number one, a plasma membrane or a cell membrane. Number two, genetic material. This could be present inside the nucleus or it could be present without the nucleus. Genetic material, that is DNA or RNA. And third is the cytoplasm, that is present inside the cell membrane. Let us discuss about each of this in detail in the next session. Thank you.